Tessa Ellison was halfway through her caramel macchiato when a man with a lopsided tie and too much confidence plopped down into the seat across from her and said, "Are you French? Because Eiffel for you." She choked on her drink. Not just a little cough, an actual splutter, eyes watering, hands flailing for a napkin. When she finally caught her breath, she looked at him, blinking. "Did you seriously just say that out loud?" He grinned, completely unfazed. "I did, and I regret nothing." Tessa shook her head, laughing. "Wow. How many women have you traumatized with that line?" "Only the ones who didn't fall in love with me on the spot," he said, leaning back like he'd just delivered a TED talk. "Then I guess I'm safe." "Are you?" She raised an eyebrow. He stuck out a hand. "Lachlan Lennox." "Tessa," she said cautiously, his name catching her attention. "Lachlan Lennox, that's a mouthful. Most people just call me Latch. Cool. Most people just leave me alone when I'm stressed drinking overpriced coffee." "I can sit somewhere else," he offered, but he didn't move. Tessa sighed, glancing toward the counter. The coffee shop was packed. Her laptop was open, a pile of notes sitting next to it. She was supposed to be working on a client's website redesign, but instead, she was now being serenaded with pickup lines from a stranger who looked like he belonged on the cover of a luxury watch magazine. "Fine," she said, gesturing at the seat. "But if you say another line like that, I'm charging you for my coffee." Lachlan grinned wider. "Deal." She tried to go back to work, but her curiosity got the better of her. He didn't look like he belonged here. Not in this tiny corner cafe on the edge of Brooklyn with its chipped tables and indie music playlist. His suit fit too well. His shoes were too clean. There was something off. "So what do you do?" Lachlan Lennox with the tragic pickup line. "I make furniture." Tessa blinked. "Furniture?" He nodded, deadpan. "Handcrafted tables, chairs, beds, especially beds," she snorted. "That was almost another pickup line, wasn't it? Only if you want it to be." She shook her head, amused despite herself. "Okay, Mr. Furniture. Why are you here annoying me instead of carving a rocking chair somewhere?" "I saw you laugh." "What?" "When I walked in. You were laughing at something on your screen. I figured anyone who laughs like that had to be interesting." Tessa blinked, caught off guard. "That's weirdly sweet." "Don't worry, I'll ruin it with another line soon." She laughed again. And for the first time in days, the tightness in her chest loosened just a little. They ended up talking for an hour. He didn't try to flirt again, not really. Instead, he asked her about her design work, about why she hated the color orange, and why she thought bagels were superior to muffins. She learned he grew up in San Francisco, hated cilantro, and once accidentally adopted a cat that refused to leave his apartment. He never mentioned anything about his job again, and she didn't push. He was charming in a completely ridiculous way, and when he finally stood to leave, he looked down at her like he was memorizing her face. "Same time tomorrow?" he asked. Tessa hesitated. "We'll see." He smiled, gave a lazy salute, and walked out. She didn't expect to see him again. Guys like him didn't stick around. They were all charm and chaos and then gone before you could remember their last name. But the next day, he was there. And the day after that. Always at the same coffee shop. Always with a new terrible pickup line that made her roll her eyes and laugh until her stomach hurt. And slowly, without even meaning to, Tessa started looking forward to seeing him. 2 weeks in, he brought her a cupcake from a bakery across town because, in his words, "Your face said you had a rough morning and sugar fixes everything." 3 weeks in, he showed up with a sketchbook, claiming he'd tried to design a chair for her. It was hideous. She laughed so hard she cried, and he looked at her like it was the best thing he'd ever seen. But he never touched her, never made a move, just talked, listened, made her feel like she existed, like she mattered. Then one rainy Thursday, he showed up in a black hoodie and jeans, soaking wet, no umbrella, holding a paper bag with her favorite croissant. "You're insane," she said, pulling him under the awning. "For you, always." She rolled her eyes. "You're still ridiculous, I know." He handed her the bag and then looked at her, really looked at her. "Tessa," he said quietly, "I like you, actually like you." She went still. "I know it's fast, and we've just been talking, but I think about you all the time. And I don't want to pretend like this is just some coffee shop thing." Tessa's heart pounded. "You don't even know me." "I know enough, and I want to know more." She stared at him. The rain poured around them, and for a second it felt like the rest of the world faded away. And she did something completely out of character. She leaned in and kissed him just once, soft, surprising even herself. When she pulled back, he was grinning. "So, tomorrow?" he asked, definitely. She didn't know the truth yet. That behind the sarcastic smile and terrible pickup lines, Lachlan Lennox wasn't a furniture maker. He was one of the richest men in Manhattan. But he didn't want her to know that, not yet. Because for the first time in years, someone was laughing at his jokes, not his money. And he wasn't about to ruin it. "You've got paint on your cheek." Tessa froze, one hand gripping the edge of the canvas as she turned toward Lachlan's voice. He leaned in the doorway of her tiny studio space, arms crossed casually over his chest, head tilted like he wasn't standing in the middle of a room that smelled like turpentine and old takeout. "I do," she asked, wiping at her face with the back of her hand. "Other side," he said, walking in and reaching out with his thumb. Before she could step back, he brushed it gently across her cheekbone, then held it up, stained with a streak of cobalt blue. "Van Gogh would be proud," he said. "Don't compare me to a tortured genius unless you plan to buy this masterpiece," she warned, nodding toward the half-finished abstract on the easel. He studied it for a long beat. "I'll take it, name your price." She rolled her eyes. "You haven't even seen the final product. I'm investing in the artist, not the outcome." That sounds like a line. It's not. Not everything I say is a line. You once told me your middle name was Danger, which is technically true if you count the time I legally changed it for a bet in college. Tessa laughed, but then stepped aside to clean her brushes. She hadn't realized he was coming today. He'd texted her once to ask about her favorite pizza topping, nothing more. And now here he was, standing in her studio like he belonged there. "When did you say you were free this week?" he asked, hovering near the window where her plants were struggling to survive. "I didn't. I've got 3 client deadlines and a gallery submission coming up. I'll bring snacks." Tempting, but not even snacks can bribe me into socializing right now. "What about a distraction?" She turned toward him. "Like what? Come with me tonight. There's a thing, it's not fancy. Just a dinner, a few people, outdoors, low-key." She narrowed her eyes. "I don't do setups. It's not a setup. You won't know anyone but me, and I'll do all the talking." "You always do all the talking." "Exactly. You'll barely have to engage." "Where is it?" "Upstate." "It's about an hour's drive." "I don't have a car." "I do." She hesitated. "Lachlan, just a dinner. No weird expectations, no secret matchmaking, just me, you, food, and probably some fireflies." She stared at him, weighing the offer. It had been weeks since she'd left the city for anything other than groceries or errands. The idea of trees, open air, and a break from her chaotic life was almost too tempting. "Fine," she said. "But if it turns into a cult meeting in the woods, I'm stealing your car." "Fair." "You'll need it though, it's a classic." She locked up the studio before they left. When they reached the curb, she stopped short. A silver Jaguar F-Type sat parked at the corner, sleek and glinting under the late afternoon sun. Lachlan opened the passenger door like it was the most normal thing in the world. "This isn't a car, it's a Bond villain's accessory," Tessa muttered. "Best way to travel. You said it wasn't fancy." "I said the dinner wasn't fancy." "I never said anything about the ride." She gave him a long look but got in anyway. The interior smelled like leather and something expensive she couldn't name. He adjusted the music jazz, mellow, and they drove in silence for a while, the city slowly melting away into trees and rolling hills. "Where exactly are we going?" she asked after a while. He glanced at her, one hand resting casually on the steering wheel. "A vineyard. My friend owns it. He hosts these dinners once a month for people he likes. And you dragged me along because I like you." She looked out the window, heart thudding louder than she wanted to admit. "You barely know me. I know you paint when you're overwhelmed. I know you bite the inside of your cheek when you're trying not to cry. I know you drink your coffee with too much caramel and pretend you hate it." She didn't respond, because if she did, she wasn't sure what would come out. When they arrived, the sun was dipping low behind the trees, casting golden light across the vineyard rows. Long tables were set along a stone path, strung with fairy lights. It looked like something out of a magazine, rustic, charming, intimate. Tessa stepped out of the car and froze. Everyone here looked like they'd stepped out of a catalog: crisp linen shirts, designer sneakers, impossibly polished women with perfect skin. She suddenly felt like a frame out of focus. "You said this wasn't fancy," she whispered. "It's not. They're drinking wine older than my apartment lease." He touched her elbow gently. "You're fine. They're just people, weirdly rich, overly tanned people, but people." She shot him a look. "Since when do you hang out with people like this? I've known them a long time." "Come on, let's find food before someone offers you truffle popcorn." They made their way to a table. Lachlan introduced her to a man named Theo who had a beard that looked professionally sculpted, and a woman named Sienna who was wearing a backless jumpsuit and talking about her ceramic collection like it was classified intel. Tessa kept her head down and followed Lachlan's lead. He told a story about a failed road trip with so much flair she nearly forgot she was surrounded by strangers. He passed her a plate of roasted vegetables like it was muscle memory. When someone asked how they'd met, he answered without missing a beat. She laughed at my worst line. I've been chasing that laugh ever since. The words sent a jolt through her chest. Later, as the sky darkened and the fairy lights blinked to life, Tessa wandered toward the edge of the vineyard. The night air was cool, the grass soft beneath her flats. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see him approaching. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "Just needed air, you disappeared. I didn't realize I was being watched." "You were," he said simply. For a long moment they didn't say anything. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets, gaze fixed on the moonlit vines. "Who are these people?" "Lachlan. Old friends, business contacts, some family." "Right," she said slowly. "You said your friend owns the vineyard." He hesitated. "I may have undersold that." "What do you mean?" "I own part of it." She blinked. "You own what?" "I invested a while back. It's complicated." She stepped back. "So you're not just a guy who makes furniture?" "I never said I made furniture." "You definitely let me believe it." "I didn't lie." "No, you just dodged the truth so hard it looped around into a lie." He stepped closer, voice low. "I didn't want to be that guy, the one who leads with money. Everyone sees the bank account and forgets the person. So you decided to play make-believe instead. I decided to get to know you without all the noise." Tessa stared at him, heart thudding, the vineyard spinning slightly beneath her feet. She didn't know whether to be furious or flattered. And she wasn't sure which scared her more. Tessa didn't speak on the drive back. She stared out the window, watching the blur of trees and headlights, arms folded tightly across her chest. Lachlan didn't force conversation. He drove with both hands on the wheel, his jaw tight, eyes fixed on the road like he could will her to understand with silence. When they reached her apartment building in Brooklyn, she opened the door without a word. He killed the engine and followed her out. "Tessa?" She didn't stop walking until they were standing under the awning, the buzz of a flickering street lamp overhead. Then she turned. "Why didn't you just tell me?" "I was going to." "After what? 6 more dinner parties, maybe a helicopter ride." He stepped closer. "I didn't plan this. You were supposed to be a girl I talked to once in a coffee shop, but then you kept showing up. You weren't impressed with anything I said. You made fun of my shoes. You laughed like I'd earned it. That's not a reason to lie." "I didn't lie. You hid who you were." "I hid what I have." "That's not the same." She looked away. "It feels the same." A car passed, its headlights sweeping over them. Lachlan dropped his voice. "I've been used more times than I can count. People pretend to care. They want access. They want influence. They want to say they're close to someone who can move things with a phone call. I don't even know who actually likes me anymore." Tessa met his eyes. "You think I'd be like that?" "No," he said instantly. "I think you're the opposite. That's why I wanted to be sure." Her voice cracked. "You should have trusted me." "I didn't know how." A beat of silence stretched between them. Then she turned and walked inside without saying goodbye. The next morning, she didn't go to the coffee shop. She tried to work, opened her laptop, deleted more than she wrote. Her phone buzzed a missed call from a number she didn't recognize. Then another. She ignored them all. By the 3rd day, she finally left the apartment. The air was brittle with the cold bite of early fall. She walked without a destination, ending up in the park near her old college, where the benches were always uneven and the trees were too tall for the squirrels. She sat down, staring at the cracked pavement. "Hey," she turned. Lachlan stood a few feet away, a backpack slung over one shoulder, his hair windblown like he'd walked across the city to find her. She didn't say anything. He sat down beside her, not too close, just enough. "I know you're mad." "I'm not mad," she said quietly. "I'm disappointed. That's worse." "Yeah," he took a slow breath. "This isn't a speech. I didn't come to convince you of anything. I just want to tell you the truth, all of it." She looked at him, arms still crossed, but her eyes didn't leave his. "I was born into money. Not the kind you stumble into, the kind that comes with a name that gets you invited to rooms you haven't earned. My father ran Lennox Global. When he died, I inherited the company and about a dozen board members who thought I was too young, too reckless, too soft." Tessa's expression didn't change. "I started investing outside the company, quietly. I bought into startups, art collectives, vineyards, nonprofits, places where I didn't have to be the CEO's son. I didn't want to be a face on a magazine. I wanted to build something no one could take from me. Why fake being normal?" He looked at her. "Because normal isn't fake to me, it's what I want, a real conversation, a real connection. Not a woman who sees a bank account and decides I'm worth her time. You didn't give me the chance to prove I'm not that woman. I know, and I hate that I ruined something good because I was scared." Tessa's throat tightened. "You could have just told me." "I didn't trust myself to believe it wouldn't change anything." They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she spoke. "You know I don't care about the money, right?" He nodded. "But I do care that you didn't think I could handle the truth." "I know," he said again, "and I'm sorry." She stood. He followed. "I need time. I'll wait." He didn't ask how long, didn't press her. Just nodded like he understood it might be forever and he'd still be there if she changed her mind. The next week passed in a blur. She poured herself into work, avoided the coffee shop, ignored the ache in her chest like it was just another deadline to push through. On Friday, her phone rang. Not a number she recognized, but something told her to pick up. "Is this Tessa Ellison?" "Yes. This is Naomi from the Lennox Foundation. We're organizing a community art exhibit in partnership with the city. Your name came up as a recommended curator. Would you be interested in meeting with us?" Tessa's heart skipped. "Who referred me?" A pause. Then, "Your portfolio was submitted anonymously." She scheduled the meeting. The next afternoon, she walked into a modern gallery space nestled between two brownstones in Tribeca. The exhibit was already taking shape, mixed media pieces, murals in progress, installations still being assembled. A young woman in a blazer handed her a clipboard and a schedule. "Mr. Lennox is in the back finalizing logistics." Her pulse jumped. "Is he?" The woman nodded. "He's been very involved." Tessa followed the signs down a narrow hall into a room filled with art supplies and blueprints. Lachlan stood at a table, sleeves rolled up, talking to a group of volunteers. When he saw her, his entire face shifted like hope had cracked through whatever wall he'd built around himself. He excused himself and walked toward her. "You came, you submitted my work." "I told them nothing, just gave them your name and walked away." She hesitated. "Why this?" "Because you once said you wanted your art to reach people who couldn't afford to visit galleries. I figured this was a start." She stared at him, the weight of the past few weeks pressing down on her ribs. "I don't want the money," she said. "I don't want the cars or the private parties or the curated life. I know. What I want is someone who doesn't hide from me, who lets me in even when it's messy." "I can do messy," he said quietly. "I'm a disaster, Tessa, but I'm yours if you'll have me." She studied him, really studied him. Then she reached for his hand. "Let's curate some chaos together." "Are you sure that's level?" Tessa asked, balancing on the edge of a step stool, one hand gripping a nail and the other holding a framed photograph of a graffiti mural. Lachlan looked up from the floor, one knee resting on a drop cloth, a tape measure dangling from his hand. "I'm certain of two things. That frame is crooked and you're about to fall." She stuck out her tongue. "I've got better balance than you think." He came over anyway, placing both hands on her waist as if steadying her was second nature. "Humor me. She didn't move for a second. Just stood there, her breath catching at his touch, the closeness still new enough to make her heart race and familiar enough to feel like it had always been this way. After a beat, she handed him the hammer. Fine, you win. But if that ends up crooked, I'm blaming you forever. He took it with a grin. That's a heavy promise. They were finishing the final setup for the gallery space days before the public unveiling. The exhibit was a mix of emerging artists Tessa had selected, each piece showcasing community stories, both painful and powerful. Lachlan had secured the funding without fanfare, staying in the background while she took the lead, just as she'd insisted. You didn't have to be here for all of this, she said as he adjusted the frame. You could have sent someone. I wanted to be here. I know, she said quietly. That's why I let you. He turned, eyes meeting hers. Do you? She nodded. You've been showing up, Lachlan, not just for me. For the artists, for the volunteers. You even carried that 90-pound sculpture across the room without complaining. I'm still sore. You didn't mention it. I didn't want to look weak. You once wore mismatched socks for a week to prove a point. I think your reputation can survive a back twinge, he laughed, the sound echoing off the gallery's exposed brick. I like how your mind works. You like that I call you out. I like that you make me want to be better. She stepped off the stool and stood beside him, surveying the wall. The frame was perfectly level. You did it, she said. I had help. They moved through the rest of the space together, adjusting lights and finalizing the catalog notes. As evening fell, the room transformed under the soft glow of installed fixtures and quiet music playing through the speakers. Tessa leaned against an empty pedestal, stretching her arms overhead. I can't believe it's actually happening. It's more than happening, it's stunning. This was just a daydream last year. Now it's a reality with your name on the banner. She looked at him, brow furrowing. You didn't let them add yours. I didn't need to. This is your vision. You made it possible. You made it real. The silence between them wasn't heavy. It was full, settled. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small and wrapped in brown paper. I got you something. She took it cautiously. If this is another cupcake with a pun, we're going to have words. Open it. Inside was a key. She blinked. Is this to your apartment? No, he said. It's to a studio downtown. I bought the building last year. It's mostly vacant, but there's a loft on the top floor with great light and original floors. I figured you might want a space you don't have to share with 3 other people and a leaky pipe. Her voice was soft. You're giving me a studio. I'm offering you freedom. No strings, no rent. Just space if you want it. She closed her fingers around the key. You're not trying to buy me, are you? He looked at her like she'd just insulted the sky. No, I'm trying to support you without getting in your way. She stared at him, unsure whether to cry or kiss him. He leaned in slightly. But if you're going to cry, maybe warn me first. I'm not great with tears. She laughed, a soft, bubbling sound that pulled a smile from him instantly. You're ridiculous, she said, and you're beautiful when you laugh. She tilted her head. You're still terrible at lines, only for you. She leaned in and kissed him, slow and certain, not tentative like before. This time it was an answer. When she pulled back, he whispered, Does this mean I can be your +1 to the opening? You're not just my +1, Lachlan. You're the reason I kept showing up. He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. You made me want to be known again. She rested her head against his chest. You are known. And I like what I found. The night of the exhibit arrived crisp and clear, the sky lit with stars that seemed brighter than usual. The gallery filled with people, critics, artists, families, and strangers who wandered in off the street. Tessa stood near the entrance, her name printed beside the title of the exhibit, dressed in simple black with paint still clinging to her fingernails. Lachlan stayed close, never hovering, always attentive. When someone tried to corner her into a pretentious critique of a piece, he rescued her with a distraction about the hors d'oeuvres. When a young artist seemed overwhelmed by the crowd, he knelt beside them and asked about their process, giving them space to shine. At the end of the evening, as the crowd began to thin and the music faded, Tessa stood on a small platform and tapped the microphone. I never thought this would happen, she said, voice steady. But someone believed in me before I believed in myself. He told me my laugh was worth chasing. Turns out he was chasing something real. She looked at him, and so was I. After the applause died down, she stepped off the platform and walked straight to him. "Come home with me," she said. He reached for her hand. "Lead the way." They left the gallery behind, fingers intertwined, the night folding around them like a promise kept, and for the first time neither of them was pretending. They were exactly who they had fought to become, together. The studio was quiet except for the soft clink of brushes in water. Tessa stood by the window, sleeves rolled to her elbows, a streak of ochre on her collarbone where she'd absent-mindedly brushed her wrist. Morning light flooded the space, pooling on the hardwood like liquid gold. In the corner, Lachlan was seated on the floor, barefoot, flipping through a portfolio she hadn't let anyone else see until now. "These are incredible," he said, holding up a charcoal sketch of a woman reaching for a thread in the sky. "Why haven't you shown these? They are old." "From before I knew what I wanted. You knew exactly what you wanted, you just didn't think you were allowed to want it." She turned from the window, drying her hands on a cloth. "You're getting way too good at reading me." He leaned his head back against the wall. "It's not hard when someone finally lets you in." She crossed the room and sat beside him. The sketchbook slid from his lap to the floor. She traced the edge of the paper with one finger before glancing up. "I got a call yesterday," she said. "From the Cooper Hewitt." His brow lifted. "They saw the exhibit, want to feature 2 of the installations in a rotating collection next season." He reached for her hand. "You said yes." I said I'd think about it. "Why?" "Because I don't want to be pulled into a world that doesn't let me breathe." "I'll keep you grounded," he said. "If you start floating too high, I'll be the one yanking your ankle." She smiled, then reached into her bag and handed him a folded piece of paper. "This came for you." He unfolded it slowly. His expression shifted as he read. Then he looked at her. "Did you open my mail?" It had my name on the return address. "I thought you were being sued by a gallerist. It's from my mother. She asked if you'd come to the fundraiser she's hosting next week, something about restoring a historic theater." He folded the letter carefully and nodded. "She wants me to make an appearance, shake hands, smile for the donors, give a speech about legacy." "Will you go?" "I haven't decided." Tessa hesitated. "Would it help if I went with you?" He turned to her, eyes steady. "You do that." "I've handled worse than wealthy board members in sequined gowns." He gave her a look. "They'll try to measure you. Let them. I'm not shrinking." That night, the ballroom was all glass chandeliers and velvet drapes. Tessa wore a navy gown that clung at the waist and fell like ink to the floor. Lachlan's hand never left hers, guiding her through introductions, murmuring names and backstories against her ear. His mother, Vivienne Lennox, was a statuesque woman in silver, her smile polished and tight. "So this is the artist." Her voice was cool but not unkind. Tessa extended a hand. "Thank you for the invitation." Vivienne's eyes flicked to Lachlan, then back. "You've stirred quite a bit of interest." "I've seen the reviews. I'm glad people are connecting with the work." Vivienne tilted her head. "And what are your intentions with my son?" "Same as his with me," Tessa said calmly. "To build something real." There was a pause. Then Vivienne smiled, not the social one, but something softer, unexpected. "He's different with you," she said. "I didn't think anyone could reach him like this." "I didn't reach him," Tessa replied. "He walked toward me." Later, after the speeches and silent auction, Lachlan found her on the balcony overlooking the city skyline. "My mother likes you. She tolerated me," which is her version of affection. Tessa leaned against the railing. "Do you miss this world when you're not in it?" He stepped beside her. "Sometimes, but only the parts that feel real, the rest of it. I could disappear tomorrow and never look back." She touched his lapel. "You're not disappearing. You're just choosing what matters." He turned toward her, hands sliding around her waist. "You matter." The kiss was slow, certain, the kind that didn't need applause or spotlights. Weeks passed. Then months. The studio flourished, becoming a space where young artists found voice and visibility. Tessa curated a second exhibit, then a third. Lachlan continued investing quietly, choosing projects that aligned with purpose over profile. One morning, she found him in the kitchen, barefoot, flipping pancakes with a spatula in one hand and his phone in the other. You're burning that, she said, eyeing the smoke, sacrifice for multitasking. I just bought a bookstore, she blinked. You what? He shrugged. It was going under, I liked the smell. She laughed, pulling the spatula from his hand. You're ridiculous. You love it. I do. One evening, after a community arts gala, they walked through the gardens behind the event space, shoes in hand, moonlight catching in the folds of her dress. You ever think about the future? She asked. Only every time I look at you. She stopped walking. I mean the real future, not just galleries and studios. He studied her. You mean rings and promises? She nodded. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small box, her breath caught. I've been carrying this for a month, he said, waiting for the right moment, but the truth is, every moment with you feels like the right one. He opened it. A simple, stunning ring nestled inside. I don't want perfect, I want messy. I want late nights and paint-stained sheets and you telling me my ideas are too much. I want all of it, with you. She took the ring, slid it on her own finger. I was going to say yes before you even asked. They married 4 months later on a rooftop garden with string lights and wildflowers and a small group of friends who had seen every part of the journey. Tessa wore a dress she designed herself, barefoot by the end of the night. Lachlan kissed her like he still couldn't believe she was real. They didn't promise perfection. They promised presence. They promised to keep showing up. Years later, on a quiet morning in their sunlit kitchen, with a toddler asleep in the next room and the scent of coffee in the air, Tessa sat on the counter while Lachlan read a manuscript from a young playwright they were mentoring through their foundation. She reached for his hand. You know what I love most? She asked. He looked up. That no matter how big the world gets, it still feels small when I'm with you. He kissed her palm. That's because you're the center of mine. And just like that, the life they'd built proved not extravagant, not loud, but extraordinary all the same. Full of love, art, truth, and the kind of wealth that had nothing to do with money.